Hey folks, my name's Brian. I'm the host of the Bearded Nerd Podcast, a podcast where I teach you how to play games like Dungeons and Dragons so that you can spend more time playing and less time learning. On this episode of the podcast, I had the immense pleasure of speaking with my friend Jonathan. You may know Jonathan as Latinos Against Spooky Shit. And on this episode, I got to know him a little better and talk to him about his upbringing, how he started playing Dungeons and Dragons, and what the future of Dungeons and Dragons looks like to him. With that being said, if you enjoy this episode, be sure to follow this podcast and subscribe. And without further ado, let's dive into this episode of the Bearded Nerd Podcast. The amount of time it has taken to actually get together and talk, it's phenomenal, the amount, but I'm so honored to have you, my friend. How are you?
Brian, I'm 36 months later. I'm great. It's taken I think 3 years at this point in time. Almost three
It's
at least.
almost three because my son is turning two in September. So for sure, 2 years. We had talked about it
So it was Gen
before.
Con 23 that we
Correct.
ended up meeting then. So
Correct.
2 years,
In
almost going
person,
on
at
three.
least.
Yes.
In person.
Yeah.
Because we have been talking, chatting, and again, I've interacted with a lot of your videos, it's so funny because some of the stuff that, like, when I see your videos,
Mhm.
first off, what like, I don't know how people interact with los spookies because, like,
Boy.
but again, being raised in a predominantly Hispanic Latino family and then
Hmm.
community, aka mostly Cuban, but Hialeah, Florida, like
Yeah.
we would not do that. And mind you, a lot of Hialeah has santeros, which are like witch doctors and like
Right.
practicing all that, which even then I'm like, yo, bro, why would you're inviting Los Spookies in
Uh,
like
Yeah,
actively?
like are we differentiating between the goodest spookies and the baddest spookies? Like what's the vibe here and how can we tell? Like
I
I don't
can't
know.
tell.
I've never had a limpia done and I don't plan on it. I'm like,
No.
seems too much of a gamble. I'm good. I'm gonna just take a shower.
Yeah, I'm just gonna do that, and you know
Yeah,
what? Just go, just mind my business, Biddle. Dude, I'm
exactly.
so happy that you're here, and for the folks listening, again, we've known each other for a while now, Biddle. We've also been on the radar for some gaming and whatnot, and talking about gaming.
Yeah.
But I want the audience to know about this and to learn a little bit more. When was like the first initial spark of nerddom, so to speak? When was that
Oof.
ignited in your life?
The first memory I have of a video game goes back to 1996, maybe 1995.
Nice.
And mi abuela, so I grew up in Ensenada. And my grandmother was the director of an orphanage, the City of Children, still standing, still active to
Oh
this
wow.
day. Yeah, and my abuela, she used to be the one that tended the clothes, made the food. Like, even though she was the director, like she was fully involved in all aspects of these boys and girls' lives. And when she was doing laundry, she would sit me in the basket, and then she would have a little TV with a Super Nintendo, and she would play Mario. And I would just watch her play Mario. And I would just watch jump up and down, and I'd watch her do all the hidden little things. And I still remember this vividly in my mind of her just playing and me watching and the sounds. Um, and so from a very early age, that's been kind of an interest of mine. That's been something that always captivated me. And it wasn't until probably 1999 when I finally played my first video game by myself that I can remember beating, which was Final Fantasy VII, which holds
Ooh,
a special place in my heart nostalgia wise. I
yeah.
know everybody's like, oh, it's not the best Final Fantasy. And it's like, that's fine. We can have our differences, but it's to me the most important because that's the one that I remember beginning to end without anybody's help beating by myself.
Wow. That's that game. I know a lot of people, like you said, talk bad about it, but it's beautiful. That just initial memory, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
matter how good the quality was. It doesn't matter. It's that initial memory that's just beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, Now, how did that progress in your life? So you talk about Final Fantasy and Mario, but how
Yeah.
did that progress? Did you have other forms of nerddom that you kind of explored, or was video games like the main thing?
It was the main thing for a while, right? So Final Fantasy turned into you know, other Legend of Dragoon. It turned into
Nice.
Chrono Trigger. It turned into all these other games, Game Boys, and not Monster Hunter. Oh, I always forget the name of this one. Dragon Quest Joker or Monster Quest
Mm,
Joker and all these other
yeah.
games. So it just, which led into Pokemon, which led into this, which led into card games with Yu-Gi-Oh,
Yeah.
which I wasn't allowed to have growing up. I wasn't allowed to do Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh. Having grown up in the church, my
Yeah.
family was like, no, that's the devil. Like, you can't have these. But my dad would still buy me the decks.
Nice.
And I'd secretly play at school. And that eventually led down to the rabbit hole where, what, 15, no, longer now. 17 years ago, I met my then friends who introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons, and we played 2.5.
Wow,
We
that's awesome.
played with the original manuscripts and everything because
Yeah.
that's what his dad had. And we were rolling with THACO, to hit armor class 0 and all the old rules and everything. And that's what we started with. And we started in their basement. And ever since then, it's been this hunger to keep
Mm,
playing, this hunger. And it's taken me a long time to realize what that hunger was. And it wasn't just sitting down with a bunch of friends and rolling dice and having fun and making jokes. It was deeper than that. And I didn't realize what that hunger was until I'd gotten a morsel of something that satisfied it, and it was storytelling. I realized, oh, it's not just the game, it's the stories, it's the lessons, it's the character arc, it's the rise and fall of a hero. It's all these other elements that I didn't have words for at the time. So um, I'm still hungry for it. Still hungry.
And that storytelling journey that you mentioned, it's progressed obviously from second edition now to
Oh
third,
yeah.
3.5, 4, fifth edition, and
New
2024
fifth.
rules,
Yeah.
because
Yes.
we we are not calling it 5.5 when we really should, but it is what it is. So that journey, you said that it's almost like a hunger that hasn't been quenched, right?
Right.
What are ways that you have been able to satisfy that hunger at times? Have you been GMing? Have you been playing? Have you been doing both? What does that look like in your life currently?
I have had the wonderful opportunity of doing both. And I used to create characters that were more coded to the world that they were in, like a
Hmm.
dragonborn and, elves and all this. And I realized it's not scratching that itch. It's not satisfying me. And truly it was within the last, actually probably since Gen Con, because I met an amazing group of friends and people there that have inspired me to rethink storytelling. I have started doing more Latina coded characters,
Sure.
regardless of the world that we live in, regardless of high fantasy, sci-fi, medieval, whatever it looks like. I've started doing more characters that I identify with,
Mm.
and not that I think a larger audience would identify with. It's not, I used to be worried about, it's like, oh, well people are going to understand this character. And it's like, well, no, I just want to represent me and my culture. And if I feel seen, through that lens, I think somebody else will feel seen through that as well. So I've been playing with more Latina names. I've been playing with more, Latina culture and backstories. Going back to like Mesoamerican and Azteca and Mexica, or Mexica, and all these other things. So, I've been GMing. I've been a player. I've helped produce. So I've done a lot of things in the TTRPG space that I'm proud of.
Now, when you say that you've been bringing more of your culture into your playing, how are you doing that as a world builder and a game master?
So as a game master, it has been, first of all, doing my due diligence and making sure that I'm representing it accurately. There's been a few games where I've been able to help the GM of that game introduce characters in my story that are very much representations of my own family growing up. They are copies of my abuela or my mom, things that I grew up with and saw, that echo kind of that history, uh, you know, a lot of people call me Chicano. I don't identify as Chicano because I wasn't born in the States. I was born in Mexico and then moved
Yeah.
over here at a young age. But a lot of that, Mexican American blending of cultures, I like to bring that forth. And when I'm GMing, I like to likewise give that space for my players because a lot of players aren't just Mexican. A lot of players are Puerto Rican. A lot of players are Dominican. They're South American. They're Brazilian. So it's like, what's specific to you and what's
Yeah.
specific that matters to you? What do you want to see? What's something that reflects your upbringing and your experience? Because
Yeah.
everybody's experience is unique, regardless of like our shared bonds and our shared culture. There's those little things that make it just different enough and unique.
I love that you brought that up because, as you know, like, my parents were born in Cuba. My brother and I were
Hmm.
born in Miami, which is obviously like the joke of, and specifically Hialeah, Florida, where that's like little Cuba, right? And
Right.
it's the Cuba in the States. And I used to not necessarily take offense, or I was neutral about it. But then I started realizing, and especially like living in North Carolina, where at first there was a lot of mystery towards it and a lot of misunderstanding and misconceptions because of movies like Scarface, right?
Yes.
That everyone was, of this caliber
Right.
of person. But then I had to educate people and say, no, like there is a beautiful culture of like the Taino that
Hmm.
influence Cuba, and then the Spaniards that influence, and then the Arabics that influence, and then Africans that were brought, unfortunately, through the slave trade. But,
Yeah.
Cuba was one of the first countries to abolish slavery in the Caribbean. And especially Jose Marti was a big proponent of fighting España and becoming an independent country and abolishing all that stuff. So just it was really important. And I love how you brought in those other aspects of folks within our own communities of like who are maybe in the Dominican, Puerto Rican, where a lot of the Caribbean Hispanics sometimes get like ousted or like
Oh
exiled
yeah.
from other community events because I don't know if it's like the sins of our fathers, so to speak, right? Like
Sure.
our grandfathers and great grandfathers who were just like maybe a little too proud to be Cuban or
Right.
Puerto Rican or Dominican and said some off the wall things, which I don't condone that either because that's not necessarily charitable, right?
Hmm.
Like that's not necessarily the right ethical moral thing to do. But I think our generation specifically have united together to say, well, wait a minute, we have a shared culture and shared memories. Like if I tell you the infamous weapon that your mother used to discipline
Right.
you, it's called the chancla.
Yeah.
Like that, and that's a memory that like I think like everyone knows
It's
that.
universal.
That shit is universal, dude. Like
Yeah.
so I love that you incorporate that though in your characters because we don't see a lot of it. Like period. We
Yeah.
just we don't. So as a personal message, like thank you for doing that because
Of
we
course.
need more of that. Now, what has been the response to that? Have you felt like you've received the response of like being an educator almost, or have you gotten mixed reviews? Take me through that.
At first, I was worried that the response would be that of, well, now you're just leaning into stereotypes, that you're leaning into
Mm,
these tropes of what a Latina household looks like.
yeah,
And because through my eyes, if I saw an abuela with a chancla and I saw all these things, there is a point in which you go, okay, not every abuela, right? But
no,
it's it's a fine line. It's a
sure,
fine line, and the way that I've played it, and the way that my game masters have played it when we're creating these worlds together, is that they've also humanized these characters in a way that makes sense. Because you're right, I can't just have an angry abuela with a chancla. That's just a trope, right? But if
yeah,
we get a chance to explore why she's upset, if we get a chance to explore the clashing of two cultures and the fact that this is an immigrant who is living outside of their culture,
Yeah.
trying to find a way to exist in the confines of this space, well, now we've added depth. Now we've
Yeah.
added color to this painting, and it makes more sense. And we start adding that conflict. We start adding, I talk back to her and I snap because I'm upset that I can't live up to the expectations that this family has set for me as an immigrant here because they expect me to just live for them. And now we've added more color. Now we've added 3D and we've added
Yeah.
edges to this mold. And so, it's easy to fall into a trope if
Hmm.
the trope doesn't expand the story. If what you're doing to the characters if what you're doing to the characters can be taken away and it doesn't add or affect the story at all, you don't need that aspect in there.
True.
But if what you're doing with that character matters, then it's just a matter of how do I dig into that and magnify it so that people realize that there's a reason for this. Um, and so a lot of people have reached out and have been super supportive. Tabletop Tempest released Beneath the Surface, which was produced by me and ran by Chris, D&D Imposter. And it is very much a love story, or a love letter, I should say, to a lot of that Brazilian and Amazonian culture surrounding kind of, Latin America. And the amount of support that we've received of people telling us like we don't see this representation. Brazil especially doesn't get a lot of representation
Yeah.
as a whole. And so for them to have these phrases, these stories, these sayings, these little nods to a culture, people are like, I don't get to see that, and it was so cool knowing that that exists outside of just like my family, or outside of just like when I visit people back in Brazil. So, um, people have really identified with it, and it's been reassuring to know that we're going in the right direction with how we're representing ourselves.
And two things that you brought up that I really love is that one, the logic behind the thing, right? Like there, when you provide a reason, why is your abuela mad at you? Well, there are certain things that abuela has to deal with, right? Like my abuela, both of them actually, they were working in the factories when they
Sure.
came here, like 16-hour days. My grandpa, same thing, like working just a lot hard, hard, tough jobs to provide ends meet. And I remember a distinct memory of my grandmother saying, and translating obviously from Spanish, like, don't be the stereotype that people expect you to be,
Hmm.
which hit me as a kid. Like, what are you talking about, grandma? Like,
Right.
I'm over here cracking Pokemon packs because like
Yeah.
because like my grandparents didn't know what it was and really didn't care. Like it was very much the same with like any type of fantasy that I was delving into, because like my grandma was highly involved in her church, San
Mm,
Lazaro specifically, and was, I mean, she was like one of the like pillars there, like of like
I
community
get that.
people. And I remember someone said, well, it's not turning my grandson into like a devil worshiper. So I think like, she just clapped back at this person,
Yeah.
and like this woman clutched her pearls, as they say here in the South. Um, and my grandparents, though, like when my grandma said that phrase, I didn't understand it until recently as an adult, where like there was a stereotype built in, caked in to certain people, which is,
Yeah.
I'm not going to judge them for it, because I've realized that they were taught something. It was that generational
Sure.
education that I can't fault them for it, when it's like you grew up a certain way and you're ignorant
Yeah.
and you were taught that ignorance. And then what I will fault you for is having the laziness to not teach yourself in the era of this thing called the smartphone,
Right.
right?
Modern technology.
Where you can teach yourself, hey, like I like personally, spicy food is phenomenal. It's great, but not every Hispanic, Latino, whatever
Right.
incorporates that into their diet and into their nutrition. Like that's not a thing. Now,
Right.
do we like to? Is our love language feeding people at times?
Sure.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we're also culturally, a lot happens around the dinner table.
Mhm.
So, like, incorporating that into a TTRPG is
Yeah.
something that, like, that's the reason why. And then the second thing that I really love, that I really want to hammer in with the audience, is like a lot of the representation. Because remember, D&D is still played as a high fantasy medieval Western Europe setting. Like, and that's cool. That's awesome. But there were other parts of the world, and I want to encourage folks like that maybe are from the Middle East, right? There were parts of the world during that time that were developing and flourishing. Well, we
Yeah.
haven't really seen that. And for us specifically, like, there's beautiful cultures within, at least like from what I know of, like the Taino, and then what, other parts of the world, and
Mhm.
specifically, like, you know, Latin America, South America, whatever you want to, however you want to label it, like, there's beautiful cultures there too that need to kind of, like, as this is leveled, we need to raise the level
Right.
of that shared knowledge. So that's something that I think is really important. And I don't know about you, but I think this is one of those times to be encouraged to do that. Whatever your
100%.
background is, go and do it, jump into it. But I say all that to lead up to this question. Now, obviously, you played, with second edition and whatnot. But how did you start creating content as Latinos Against Spooky Shit? What's the origin story about that? Because I feel like you're gaming and you're doing all this, but then you're really laying some educational knowledge with this main page. So tell us about that.
I've said this before on when people have asked me this on other shows, and I'll say it again. I wish I could tell you that I'm this genius when it comes to marketing and that I came up with this idea and it was perfect and flawless and executed. But no. Like any incredible thing that happens, it was purely accidental. So 2020, 2021. I'm going through a very difficult time in my life with a divorce, and it is messy and it is rough and it is taking a toll on me. And I needed something, a creative outlet of some sort. I needed to just be able to do something to take my mind off things. And I started just posting silly little videos, nothing crazy, just little things that I found funny. Um, and I remember one girl, I don't remember her name, unfortunately, but she posted a video that was like, have you ever noticed your voice is different when you're speaking in a different language? And I recorded my reaction and I was like, hi, my name is Jonathan. Hola, mi nombre es Jonathan. I was like, oh shit, my
Yeah.
voice is higher in Spanish. And I
Yeah.
never realized that. And so I just did a quick little video of that. Next thing I know, 6 million views and 10,000 followers. And I'm like,
Wow.
okay, maybe I'm a voice guy. Let's try this. Let's do some voice things. Tried doing some voice stuff, and none of it worked out. It's like, damn, okay, not a voice guy. That's all right. Back to the drawing board. I got to take advantage of this. And then I just so happened to post a video of me frying some eggs and flipping them in a pan because I grew up working in a kitchen. I have
Yeah.
been working in kitchens since I was 8 years old, and so I was like, okay, let's try this. 6 million views, 10,000 more followers later.
Wow.
Fuck, I'm an egg guy. I'm gonna do eggs for the rest of my life. This is all I'm doing now. Thankfully, I tried doing a couple more cooking videos, tried a couple more egg videos. None of them panned out. No pun intended. So I'm sitting there, and then I remember late night, and God, it must have been March. Nate Petrosky, a creator on TikTok, still active, and he lives off grid, and he films his lifestyle, and he lives, just on the land, and just films himself and his dog. And he filmed a video where he was like, I heard a strange noise outside, so I went to investigate, and it's him opening the door to pitch black darkness in the woods. And I remember thinking, I was like, you couldn't fucking pay me enough to do anything out there at that time of day. So I remember hitting record and stitching it. And the initial concept was like of Jehovah's Witnesses going to the door, knocking and educating somebody. So that was the point of view that I was going through, was a representative of Latinos Against Spooky Shit, the organization, and me educating this person on why they shouldn't be going out into the woods and what they should do instead. And that video took off. And I'm like, okay, I think I captured lightning in a bottle here. I
Yeah.
wonder if I can reproduce that. And I tried another one, and sure enough, that went well. And then a third one, a fourth one, and so on and so forth, until I was like, okay, this is my brand. And incredibly lucky, because one of my followers, Bruce, bless his heart, Bruce Sousa, he reached out to me. He's like, hey, bro, love your content. I kind of dabble in some graphic design stuff. Do you mind if I made a logo for you? I'm like, yeah, sure. I mean, I'll pay you for it. He's like, nah, don't worry about it. I was like, okay. And he created what is now to this day still my logo
That's
for
awesome.
Latinos Against Spooky Shit. And yeah, the rest is history.
That's awesome. That's yeah, I've seen a lot of your videos and commented on it. And um first off, I don't know how people even think about like who goes. There was one video where it was, I think you recently posted it, but it was a group of people playing outside in the dark, which number one, why are you outside in the dark?
Nothing fun
Second,
happens in the dark.
no, no, not at all. And let's be real, like, shit, dude, you're outside playing in the dark. Either way, there was a person with like long black hair, and
Hmm.
Los Ojos were like, they're like, now mind you, that family saw them and booked it and ran,
Yeah,
which is the smart thing.
great.
But your first mistake was being outside
Yeah.
in the dark in the middle of the night.
What's the point? What benefit is that to anybody? Like,
No,
unless you're in your backyard with all the lights on, making carne asada or having some bistec, some coronas, having a
something,
good
dude.
time, tequila, singing, and even then, you better be within running distance to the door,
And
because the
this is,
second I hear anything out there, I'm locking everybody out.
bro, this is the thing. Like with that, see, all of a sudden you can get those like bottles, because I like, but I'll drink, Corona from the bottle. Like I know
Yeah.
I've seen some cans and I'm like, nah,
No,
that's not my
that's
thing.
sacrilegious.
That
That feels racist, honestly.
that's yeah, I don't know. I just no thank you. I'm throwing a bottle at their, like, throwing a bottle and then running and just being like, all right, dude, like, no, I'm
Yeah.
good. I'm getting out of here. But like some of the videos that you've done, what has been the weirdest? Like, what, like you saw it and you were like, holy crap, this is weird. Well, like, do you have a distinct memory of a video that you did that was just almost the most off-putting?
There's a lot of videos. So a lot of the videos that you see are like that's the whole clip. I've shown you the entirety of the clip.
Yeah.
Like there's no more, there's no less. A lot of people are like, "Where's the rest of it?" I was like, "Sorry, Mijo, that's it."
Yeah.
But sometimes I get people who send me clips that are like 4 to 5 minutes long, because it has to build context to what is happening. And some of those, like, I can't react to, because like it's just too much content for me to try to splice together in my
Yeah.
normal format. But there's a few that do get me. Like there's a gentleman that was urban exploring. I don't know if you know what urban exploration is. But it's essentially people of a certain demographic that will go out and explore these old abandoned industrial places.
Oh,
You know, and
yeah.
so but this one in particular, they found actually an entire abandoned neighborhood. Like they looked it up on the map in real time. It doesn't show up on Google Maps, doesn't show up on Bing, it doesn't show up on any map that, paper map, nothing.
Bro,
Just a
when it doesn't show up
completely,
on Bing, you got
you're
problems.
right. When Bing is even like, hey, I don't know, dude. Like, but there's nothing. But there's a very clear, it's an overgrown with grass road that was clearly paved at one point, but has been taken over. Like they get to this cul-de-sac, and it's easily 10 houses, five on
I'm
each
already
side.
shaking my head no.
Yeah, and it's overgrown, roots have taken over the houses, branches have collapsed and like broken windows. Like this place has been abandoned. And a lot of people are like, oh, it's a paper town. Paper towns are fake towns that are created for like map service roads and all that kind of stuff. And they're just made to like, it's a whole thing. But he's like, no, because this place has clearly been lived in. Like, because he would go into some of these houses and he would open the door to like the fridge and there's old rotted food in there. Like, no, clearly at one point people lived here. Like
Yeah.
there's things here. It's not just a shell of a building. It's been
There's
lived in.
tangible things there.
Tangible things. And he keeps exploring. And in the video, obviously he didn't hear it at the time, but in some parts of the video, he would caption like, oh, heard this in the background. Turn up now for you to like listen to it. And like you would turn it up and listen to it, and you could hear like dissonant whispers. You could hear voices. And he was by himself. It was just him, like a GoPro, just rocking by himself, completely quiet, but you would be able to hear things like chittering. And at first you're like, okay, maybe, somebody who's unhoused, somebody who, is trying to live here. But it's the way that these voices sound. Because
Yeah.
it sounds like they're coming, like they're right at him. It doesn't sound like it's off in the distance. It sounds like it's right at the camera. And he keeps exploring. And again, things that he sees now later in the video when he's like in post-production, but he'll highlight it and see like the shadow of somebody in a doorway that he doesn't catch until well after.
That's a big
At,
nope.
no, at one point there's a door that's just opening and closing at the end of a door, at the end of a hall, slamming, 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 slamming. And the second he gets close to it, it slams shut. And he's yelling at this person, like, leave him alone or whatever. He gets a little big for his britches, crashes through the door, breaks down, and there's nobody there. There's no window for somebody to jump out of. There's no closet for them to hide in. It's just an empty room. And I'm like, bro, like, I would have left 30 minutes ago. I would have left the second my Uber pulled out. I would have been like, nope, sorry, homie, turn back around, pick me up. I'm not doing this. Like,
Bro, when I hear that, I immediately am shaking my head. No, hell no. You can't
mm-mm,
pay me enough to do
no.
that. Like, I wish I had the courage and the audacity of said demographic that you mentioned to even like if I carried a percentile of that, I'd probably be like way more successful in life than I am
Yeah,
right
right.
now because bro, no, I'm not doing that.
No.
Like I just think also, dude, that stuff is like real. Like there's some crazy stuff out there. Like especially when you read stories of like legitimate like exorcists who
Yeah.
like with an exorcism there is an actual process that you have to go through psychologically. There's to actually understand if that's an actual possession or if
Yeah.
it's like a mental health crisis because the human
Yeah.
brain is fascinating. Man, I've seen some stuff, dude, especially like with so I was a historian for a very long time and like specifically a cultural historiographer. So I studied cultures, right?
Okay.
And like I went to a school called Franciscan University. It's like a small Catholic school. And I remember witnessing and seeing like this one priest who was like he was just chill normal doing his thing and there was like a bunch of different things there like I'm literally doing my thesis. Like I stayed in on campus during summer to work on my thesis that was like 50 plus pages long of just me writing like historical research. And there's a conference there and there's like things going on and there's like prayer services and whatnot. I'm like, okay, I'll check it out. Sure. Whatever. Dude. And this one guy, like, long story short, unfortunately, I've already made it too long, but long story short, guy's going through an exorcism and his head looked like that of a pig. And I saw this happening and I went 180. I said, nope, not on me, big dog. And I went back to my room. I ordered pizza and stayed my ass in the room. And like they, then obviously it's a small school, so the news got out and they said like, "Hey, sorry students, like this is a very non-typical process because the process is like years long to actually do
Yeah.
that." And this was like more of like think of it like an emergency doctor, like seeing a patient, and
Yeah.
this ministry had to happen. But bro, I 180'd myself out of that because when I heard, oh yeah, this person's head looks like that of a pig, I said, nope, big dog, that ain't me. That's
No.
like that's not the life I'm choosing.
Yeah,
And
right.
bro, I
This is above
remember,
my pay grade.
yeah, no, this is way below my pay grade. And I think I went and watched anime, or I watched Nacho Libre, because I was like, I need something like funny, and I need something like to distract me. But no, dude, like I don't understand how people keep doing that. So like you said that people send you videos. Has there one that you've been like, nah, bro, this is like completely fabricated?
Uh, I'm going to pull back the curtain a little bit for a lot of
Okay.
viewers that might know me. There's a lot that I know are fabricated. There's a
Okay.
lot that I know are just crafty editing. There's a lot that I know are skits or bits that I'll still
Yeah.
reply to. Because if I sat down and I tried to take the time to find all the real ones, I wouldn't have that much content, right? Because there's the odds of uh videotaping or
Sure.
documenting a real paranormal experiment or experience slim to none, right? Like so many conditions have to be just right. Um, so I know that a lot of what I react to may not be in all actuality a real paranormal event, but should it be a real event, that is where I step in and kind of give you that advice.
Dude,
Also, I think we all agree Nacho Libre is an honorary Mexican. Jack Black is 100% coming to the carne asada. Just throw that
yes.
out there for anybody that ever questioned it.
110%. And I'll be honest, dude, I have pretty much like every video I've watched of yours, I've never thought that it was fabric like that the what you're stitching is
No.
fabricated, because my simple self is like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not
Yeah,
gonna eat, like I don't want to even spend the time knowing if it is fake or not. Like
sure.
I'm
I'm
heading
just not gonna
out.
put up with it. Yeah.
Nah, dude.
No, I watch everything with the assumption that shit, if this were real, this is how I would handle it. But no, there are some that I know are just very well done. Like there's one by a channel. He posts very regularly El Cucuy, and it's often videos of like small children haunting his house or slamming on doors, and it's very well done of quick cuts and edits to make it just believable enough. But even then, I'm like, "Ah, still, no, thank you, hard
Nah,
pass."
bro. Even I don't care if
Mm-mm.
it's hard edited. Like, nope.
Yeah,
I'm not playing with it. And that's why I'm a real life paladin. Like that's nope. Just nope. I'm not doing that. But speaking about paladins, in your, we've
Oof.
talked about how you've created these really personal and intimate characters.
Mhm.
How does that reflect when you're choosing a class or an occupation or role depending on the RPG that you're playing? Do you tend to go towards like, I don't know, like a cleric or a paladin or a monk or something like that because it best represents that intimate character you've created? Or do you kind of choose a little bit and kind of keep the guardrails so that you can be a little bit more optimized? What's that process like when creating a character?
So what's really funny about that is that I haven't had the chance to create a Latina coded character in 5e.
Okay.
I haven't gotten to do that in Dungeons and Dragons yet. A lot of the time when I finally decided, you know what, I want more Latina coded characters, more characters that I can personally draw experience from. It started being through um what was they say? Through other TTRPG systems.
Yeah.
It first started with Call of Cthulhu. Uh
Ooh, that's a good one.
eh, it was a very good one, and it was the Dread Carnival that we did, and it was
Oh, nice.
Isai Guerrero. And Isaid being my middle name,
Hmm.
Guerrero being a bit of an ode to a Latino inspiration to me, which was the late great Eddie Guerrero, a WWE wrestler.
Hell yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I kind of want to mix and match these two names. And Call of Cthulhu is very much not a class-based game, as
For
if, you know,
sure.
for anybody that's played it. So that's when I was able to like, okay, I'm a high school student. What skill sets would I know as a high school kid? And what would I have learned from my own upbringing that I could pull into this? And so that made it a lot easier in that regard. And then I've also got games like I've done Candela Obscura. We
Nice.
did Kids on Bikes. We did what other one? We're doing Blades in the Dark.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Actually, the Blades in the Dark is really cool. So that one's still in production. So I won't say too much about it. But what I can say is that the theme and the setting, because we were talking about this earlier, was um, kind of cultural history and how that's brought up. And this one's really fun because it's what if Mesoamerican um, tribes, colonies, cultures, Azteca and, Mayan and all these things, what if they managed to push back the conquistadors? What if they
Mm,
managed to develop and evolve into the industrial era without Spanish influence? And what would
yeah.
that look like? And kind of just playing with that realm. What if the gods that they pray to were gods that weren't killed off by the conquista, and we managed to use that in our technology instead? So that's kind of the world that we're playing in with that, which
Interesting.
is super exciting and super fun. But yeah, no, a lot of the systems that I've played so far have allowed for personalization and less classification, if that makes sense.
I like that. I think that's actually a better route to go, especially with, as we both know, WotC has done some interesting things in how they've handled the OGL and how they've handled that. That is public knowledge.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like a lot of people are stepping away from 5e. Like they're doing their own thing with 5e and either massively homebrewing it or just running it as is, or they're going the other route and playing other RPG systems.
Yes.
From your experience, though, especially like I would say that you're probably one of the OG players where you've played second edition, right? Like if
Yeah.
you've played second, you're considered, in my opinion, an OG. What are some of the things that you've noticed that some other systems are doing really well?
The shift to so with Dungeons and Dragons, and again, not that it's a bad system by any means.
It's
I
a
think
great system.
it's a great system. It's a great jumping off point for introduction to the
Yes.
game. Um, for the concept of rolling dice and math and what these things mean. It's a great starting point for anybody. Um, but once you get the hang of that, the thing that the other systems do really well is that they stop focusing on the dice rolls. It stops focusing on the story being told through feats and skills and spells and abilities, and focuses more on the storytelling aspect of these games. Um, Candela Obscura being one of my recent favorite ones, because the way that you level up in that is not through killing ghouls and goblins and zombies and spirits. Because as I think Brendan Lee Mulligan said, if that was the point, then wizards would just go out and stab a whole bunch of goblins and learn all the spells they need to and level up all the way through if it was all XP based.
Yeah.
So Candela does a phenomenal job of those milestones. So the way that you level up is by asking those questions at the end of the session. Did I encounter something supernatural? Did I meet any of my, prerequisites for like my story, et cetera, et cetera. And so it forces the players to stop thinking of, okay, we're good guys, they're bad guys. Let's just kill them, get a bunch of loot, get a bunch of XP, move on to the next thing. It forces players to think, how do I engage with this world in a way that develops me further so that I can keep pushing that narrative and story in a way that makes sense?
Yeah.
So Candela does an amazing job of that. Call of Cthulhu does an amazing job of adding the dread and sanity aspect of these things happening, and personifying that fear per person and making that a core part of its game. because it's hard to make players afraid. But if you add
Yeah.
that as a core mechanic, if you add that as a concept to the game of like, okay, fear and dread affect you, and the things that you do will happen, and those dice rolls will affect how that plays out, et cetera, then it adds that extra layer. And it's not about, well, do I have a spell slot left to be able to like cure this, or do I
Yeah.
have, revivify? It takes away the safety net of magic by having these
Mm.
games that rely on narrative. So, um, yeah, these other games just do a phenomenal job of pushing storytelling to the next phase of what it should be.
What it seems like is narrative and storytelling are outranking the mechanical aspects of the game, right? Where like the original creators of Dungeons and Dragons really were converting historical skirmish and wargaming into the
Hmm.
concept of what would it be like to tell the story of one of the generals or the heroes of that historical fight, right? And then making it fantasy and then making it what it is, what we see now, versus something like Daggerheart or now, Blades in the Dark, where it's more narrative focused. But I don't know if have you been keeping up with MCDM or Matt Colville's Draw Steel? And if so, what are
I've
your
not
thoughts on it?
I have not been able to take a glance on that. That's so me branching out into new TTRPG systems has been very recent, and it wasn't
Okay.
until again Gen Con when you
Yeah.
and I met up for the first time that I was introduced to, oh shit, there's something other than D&D. There's
Yeah.
other systems out there. I was almost fully unaware of it. I had heard people talking about all these other game systems, and I never really understood it. I thought it was like a different set of rules for Dungeons and Dragons, but I was just very unaware and very ignorant of the fact that like other systems have been developed that work just as good, if not better than for certain things. Um, so I've not had a chance to see that. I'm still discovering new systems. I'm still playing new ones. Um, the most recent one that I tried, like I said, I just learned Candela Obscura about a year ago, and Blades in the Dark is the newest one that I've added into my repertoire of games.
What, with you learning these new systems, what could you tell folks in the audience who are wanting to dive into a new system? What are some of the key factors or concepts that you would tell them to kind of get started if they're curious, but they haven't made the move or don't know what to do? How would you guide them?
Figure out figure out what kind of story you want to tell. Because if you're trying to tell a story that's based on like I hate to say it, but fear, right? If you're trying to tell a story
Mm,
that's a horror game, well, then you're going to want a system that uh accents that and that
yeah.
works with that. And there's so many systems that work so well with it. There's the Alien
Oh yeah.
game, which I'm super excited. There's Dread, there's Candela Obscura. There's all these games that are like, okay, this needs to be the focal point and this helps drive that narrative. Let's look at that. You're not going to play a horror game with Munchkin. Just doesn't make sense. Although you never know. Um, I had an idea for that's actually that's hidden deep in my chambers. I can't talk about that. That's a game that I want to run one day and not have people know. Um, there's think of Baskin Robbins, 31 flavors, babe,
Yep.
and there's a flavor for everything that you want. If you're
Yep.
thinking, well, maybe I want more of a like a mech game. There's a lot of mech-based games out
Yeah, for
there. Like if
sure.
you want to be a Gundam fighter and like you want mechanics that are designed around you piloting a mech, it
Yes.
exists. If you're
Yes.
like, hey, you know what? I want a space exploration game where we have to run a ship and keep it running and operating. There's a whole nother set of games and systems that is dedicated to that. If you're
Absolutely.
like, hey, I want to be a merchant, like I just want to sell stuff and just not even have combat and just worry about, selling and maintaining an economy. Believe me, babe, there's a whole system designed around just that.
Yep.
So determine what you want in your next game, and then literally just type in TTRPG after, and you will find a game system that allows you to play that. And I actually did a panel on this at PAX West last year, but kit bashing. Kit bashing is an absolute thing where you can find elements of another game that you like. You can just adopt that. There's no law. There's no rules against seeing like, I really like this.
Yep.
But this system doesn't support it. Make it support it. Just
Yep.
adopt that and bringing it over. One of the things that I adopted personally for Dungeons and Dragons, and this is just because I think wizards are so underappreciated at low levels. For
Yes.
magic missile, when you roll your d4s, um, if you explode, meaning that if you roll
Ooh,
your damage out and it rolls a
yes.
4, you get to keep rolling that until you don't explode with it anymore. That's just a little thing to make it like impactful. Because even at a low level, magic fucks hard,
Yes,
and
it
it
does.
should, but nothing sucks more than as a wizard when you roll a bunch of die and they're all ones. And it's like, well, now you just wasted one of your 2 spell slots.
Yep.
Hopefully this goblin doesn't get close enough to shank you in the kneecap and end your fucking life. So,
Yeah, dude.
um,
Like,
sometimes you just got to take things.
it's very true. And something I'm actually going to be borrowing that. So thank you very much for that.
I
I
got you.
actually have kit bashed a lot because when I was growing up playing, I felt that there was a lot of limitations.
Yeah.
And like, anyone that knows me pretty well will tell you I don't like being limited. Like
Mhm.
it's probably I got to talk to a therapist about that. But
Yeah.
well, we'll get there. We'll cross that bridge. But I when I when players of mine have critted, but then they double the dice and it's like 2 1s or like whatever it would be, it stinks. So what I normally do now is we double the dice, but the first dice is max damage. So if you roll a
Yes.
d8, you get 8 points automatically, and then you roll that other one. So that way you're still having a bit of both worlds.
100%.
And you mentioned it, you hit the nail on the head. There's no rules stopping you from doing that because as long as it supports your narrative style of play, then you should be doing that, right? You
Right.
you should be exploring that. Now, with that being said, what are some of the tips that you would give folks who are listening to this? They haven't even played a game of an RPG, but they're really wanting to, but they just don't know how to take that first step. What would you advise them based upon how you took first steps into whether content creation or playing or whatever it may be?
S- I say this with so much love,
Mm-hmm.
and I want people to hear me all the way out before that they make an opinion on what I'm about to say. Nobody gives a shit about you. And hold on, give me a second. What I mean by that is that nobody cares about your story in the sense that nobody cares if it's good or bad. Nobody cares if it's intricate or not. Nobody gives a shit. Just do it. Just do the fucking story. If you have friends around you that are like, hey, we want to play, and you're like, I could probably tell a story. It doesn't even matter if you copy Aragon. It doesn't matter if you copy
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings and just rename the characters. It doesn't matter if you copy something that you're intimately familiar with and just adapt it a little bit. That's fine. Nobody cares. Nobody's going to care. When you're first starting off, people just want to have fun. People just want to enjoy it. Stop trying to be anything other than just you, right? Because if you start worrying about, I want to be the next Critical Role, I want to be the next Dimension 20, I want to be this. Well, I've seen these guys do it, and they do it so good. They do what they do very great. What do you do very great? Do what you do. That's all you can do. Okay. There's not a big production behind you. There's not millions of people watching you. You don't have to worry about, well, shit, our revenue and like, how are we going to sell t-shirts? You don't have to worry about it. Nobody gives a shit. Just do it because you want to do it. Do it because it's fun. And if you fuck up something, you fuck up something. You have to
Yep.
learn. Everybody has to learn some way. You're not going to be perfect out of the gate. So nobody gives a shit about the story. They just give a shit about having fun. So just have fun with it. And you
That's
only
true.
get better by doing it. So, you know, eventually you'll care about your story. And eventually your players will care about the story. And now I've played campaigns when I first started where we didn't know the fucking story we were doing. We're just fucking around.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden something happened. There's a spark, there's a moment where you realize, oh, they're invested in this. They care about this one moment that I thought was insignificant. I wonder how I can create something out of that. I wonder if I can build on that. And then a story happens, much like in real life. In real life, I don't know what's going to happen the second I step outside my door.
Mhm.
I have an idea of what I want to happen. I know what I have to do,
Yeah.
but there's so many random chance encounters that, like, shit, sometimes my day goes completely off the rails, and that's okay. So you're going to find those moments, learn to identify them, latch onto them, build a story. It could be out of nothing, but build it.
That's beautiful. And that's perfect. I think more people, if more people didn't care what other about the opinions of others, especially in this hobby, like
Mm,
I don't know what it is that made people so self-conscious about telling a story when we tend to be the most welcoming of hobbies.
yeah.
Like we
I
don't
think there's
care.
a I think there's a vulnerability
That's true.
to storytelling because much like me, and like I was talking about my characters, every character that I've created has a piece of me in them.
For
They
sure.
are me to some capacity, right? And for me to personify that character is for me to bring out sometimes the worst parts of me,
Yeah.
sometimes to showcase parts of me that maybe I'm ashamed of, or maybe that I'm not fully aware of yet, but they mean something to you in some way, shape, or form. And pulling that out and showing it to somebody and saying, hey, I'm going to try to do something with this. I don't know what yet. It's kind of just a lump of clay, but hopefully at the end of this, it's something beautiful. It's vulnerable because you don't
Yeah.
know what the other person is doing. You don't know how the other person's going to take it. It's something deep within us that is part of us. And, to role play is to be vulnerable. And I know a lot of people are like, well, you can't let the bleed happen, or, like it's just acting. And I was like, yes, it is. But even the best of actors have to pull from experience. Cause like, if you don't know how to be sad because you've never been sad in your life, how are you going to act sad? If you've
Yeah.
never cried, then how are you going to cry? Like it's got to pull from something. And there's got to be a little bit of bleed sometimes. It happens. I've pulled from I remember season 2 of Crit Hit Chronicles where we did a My Hero Academia uh
Ooh. Yeah.
themed game. Very
Nice.
fun. Again, I was this is the one time where I very much leaned into a stereotype because it's an
Hmm.
anime and I think it was super fucking funny.
Yeah.
I played hold on, I have to find his name because I think it's so fucking hilarious. Oh, hold on. I don't know if you edit this, but you can
No,
edit
you're
this.
fine. No worries about it. As you're looking for that, excuse me, I think, and I think it's really important to understand that the bleed through, as you say, and as it's been said, is completely natural. Like
It is.
it is natural for that to occur.
Mhm.
I think that I think during a good session zero, that's why I like to host multiple session zeros.
Yes. 0 and 0.5 are super important.
Yes, because you can talk to your players about saying, hey, bleed through happens. Is it okay? Are you comfortable with that? Or do you just want to, meet once a week, have a couple of beers or sodas or whatever
Yeah.
drinks, whatever, and just roll dice and hack and slash, right? Like, do you want,
Yeah.
and that's completely fine,
Some
but you
people
have
want the
to,
full mental disconnect.
yes, I know people that I work with that play Magic and they're very casual, or they play D&D and it's like slapstick humor, or we're going to hack and slash and do this
Yeah.
because they're so stressed out at work that they just do this. So, yeah, it's okay to have that bleed through. I think you just have to have a conversation about that. But what was your character's name before? Oh man.
Isaí Ricardo Montes de la Torre Domínguez de la Cruz Santiago Lorenzo Guzmán Guerrero.
So basically, just a typical name.
And
Yeah, just
it was
there.
like how, because it's an anime, right? It's an
Yeah,
anime beast theme. I was like, what would be something so dumb in an anime that would happen with a Latina character? A very long name. A very
yeah,
long name
one
would be
hundred
really
percent.
funny. And
But did they give
I
him a
would
nickname? Did they give your character a nickname that you
It was
had
just
to?
it was just Isai. They just ended up calling me by my first name
Oh,
always.
even better.
Yeah, yeah. So it would only be like if a teacher had to do roll call or anything like that, they'd have to go through the whole thing. But very rarely it's like just Isai. They're like, yeah, but we need your full last name. All right. Like you got enough pen for this one?
Yeah.
But um we were talking about bleed through with that character.
Yeah.
I remember there was a moment where we did a scene where I was arguing with my abuela. Something had happened, and like I hadn't been helping the family at like the family shop, and abuela kind of snapped at me. And I remember I snapped back, and there was a moment of bleed through that happened where it wasn't just Isai talking, it was a lot of my own frustrations growing up
Mm.
in a family that had expectations of me. It was a lot of frustrations that I never got to vent out in this way and lash out that I realized it went beyond just Isai, and it very much was a moment of me like stepping into a role. And the GM, phenomenal game master Cujo, fucking killed it, and he let the scene play out because he'd warned me beforehand, like, hey, I'm gonna push your character, like just so you know. And I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
give it to me. Like, I'm ready for it. I'm fine with it. And so everything was kosher, lines and veils were respected fully, but he gave me that width to just explore that for a second in this just verbal lashing and tirade that I got to go on that I had to pull from personal experience. If somebody else had had that same circumstance and they hadn't had that same um abrasion with their family, maybe they wouldn't have had that concept, you know? So
True.
it's those little things. Bleed has to happen in some degree.
And I think also two things that come up from that is one, who hasn't had some sort of butting of heads, some resentment, some
Sure.
confrontation with others in your family, right?
Right.
So that is a completely healthy and natural response. The other thing that I want to ask, and almost towards some of the last questions that I want to ask you is, how do you distinguish between acting bleed through and then this is just a game where you're rolling dice? How do you balance that? And how would you guide folks in the community, in the audience, on kind of maintaining that balance?
It's first of all, it takes a lot of trust in your scene partners and in your GM to feel comfortable enough to explore those things, knowing that you are in safe hands, knowing that, like in some promiscuous activities, aftercare is important. And a lot of times in scenes, if things get really emotional and heated, especially if they're recorded, um, as a player or as a GM, you have to know when it's like, hey, let's take a breather. Things got really intense. Let's do a quick table touch to make sure everybody's in a good headspace. Everybody's okay. That was a big emotional outburst. Like, if we need to take 10 to calm down, let's take 10. If we need to stop for the evening, let's stop. But having that communication beforehand and having that trust built, because the second that gets abused or taken advantage of, you can never let yourself get there again. And
Yeah,
that's a
you
very,
you
very
can't regain that trust.
no, it's one of those things where it's just gone. And so for me, again, session 0.5, super important. Consent sheets for people's lines and veils as a player. If you have a GM outside of like a very close friend that you've known for a while and it's a home game and everybody's been comfortable with each other, if you're playing something with people that you maybe have never played before or only know of like their play style professionally or anything like that, um, and a consent sheet isn't being introduced, I would opt for it. I would ask. I would be like, hey, I would just feel a lot comfortable if I knew everybody's limits. I don't have to know your individual personal limit. Like, you don't have to tell me, hey, this person has this limit, this person has limit. If people want to keep it private, then obviously just gather it into a universal consent sheet for everybody to see so we know what limits we have. Um, and if a player or a GM or anybody like that refuses or doesn't know what that is, they might just be unaware of it, which is perfectly fine. People learn all the time. But if they refuse on the principle that they don't cross lines ever. Bit of a
Mm-mm.
red flag, because how do you know you've never crossed the line if nobody's ever felt safe enough to tell you, or if you've never known what the lines are? So, like, taking the extra 5 minutes for people to fill out a sheet doesn't hurt anybody. So,
That's true.
um,
Yeah.
but as far as the bleed through goes, you know, um, but as far as the bleed through goes, I think it's just important to remember that at the end of the day, it's a game. You're telling a story, and there has to be a little bit of separation. But I think also being comfortable enough to talk to your peers and being like, "Hey, this one thing happened in here that made me feel some sort of way. Can we just talk about it really quickly?"
Yeah.
Sometimes you have real life frustration with somebody and the way they're playing their character. Like, hey, like this is bleeding over, and I know that I'm getting frustrated, and it's not with you, it's with your character, and I just want to hash it out real quick because like I don't want this to stew. And I think just recognizing that, and it takes a while to recognize. um Originally, when I first started playing D&D, it was really easy for me as a player to get upset at other players at my table. I'm like, God, you're being such a fucking idiot, stop doing these things,
Yeah.
why are we doing this? And then the table would erupt. We'd all get upset and go our separate ways for a couple days,
Yep.
and then come back and be like, okay, well, you were doing this. It was really pissing me off. Well, you were doing this. It was really pissing me off. And I mean, we were, 16 and 17 at the time. We weren't familiar with bleed or what any of this was or what it meant. We just
Yeah. And
know
I wasn't even
I'm upset.
around.
Yeah, right.
Like
Like,
we,
I'm upset. You did a thing. Fuck
yeah.
you.
Yeah. We were in the age of gaming where we were just happy to play because the outside communities, groups, whatever,
Hmm.
were almost like, at least in my experience, I did not necessarily share that I played D&D or that I collected comic books or played Pokemon or whatever because of the ridicule and the bombardment of stuff that I just didn't want to hear. So like that type of consent form and all that other things like weren't even present because most people would just be like, okay, if I'm pissed off at this, I'm either going to like hash it out with this
Yeah.
person or we're done playing and we're not going to play, which
Yeah.
is going to be negative. So we resulted back to the first thing.
Like, I'm
Like,
just going to storm off.
yeah, exactly. And again, you bring up a really good point that even if it's a casual game, you have to have that level of communication where you talk to your players and your GM and say, "Hey, this is what I'm cool with. This is what I'm not cool with.
Yeah.
This is the type of game and the theme I want to play," and go from there. And I really love that you said that. Now, with that being said,
Mm.
the last question I want to ask, and this is kind of flipping it from uh you know, TTRPGs to
Six
your
inches soft, three hard. I'm sorry, what was the question?
well, the main question as the CEO and founder of Latinos Against Spooky Shit.
CEO.
Um
Oof. That sounds
you're the
that makes it sound like I pay taxes.
well, you're the founder at least of this.
Yeah,
It's more of like a nonprofit because you are giving the people good advice, right?
you're right. Yeah, it's a
What?
PSA.
That's right. That's right. What would you tell someone who is dealing with Los Spookies right now? What's your piece of advice?
Man,
Let's
I'm
end
gonna
it
I'm gonna
on that.
I'm gonna take this on a wholesome route.
Okay.
Um, right now we have a lot of very scary things happening in this world. We have a
True.
lot of things that are haunting, and things that go bump in the night, and things that we are constantly looking over our shoulder for. And it is a very heavy way of living. It is a very, very, very tiring way of living. And I understand that a lot of people are exhausted. A lot of people are hurt and sad. And I want you to know that despite all those spookies that are happening around us, and despite all these terrible things that exist, there's still a lot of good left in this world. There's still a lot of things left to fight with. Um, Great community, great people that show up for us, people that are willing to quite literally fight tooth and nail for our existence as Latinos in this country. Um, and I think everybody has their own version of Vix, whether that's protesting, whether that's calling the representatives daily and making their voices heard, whether that's little shows of rebellion against the institutions. Whatever it is, just realize that Los Spookies never win. Los Spookies might persist. Los Spookies might be there for a season. They might be annoying. They might fuck your shit up for a little bit, but I promise you, Los Spookies don't last forever. They go away. We fight them off. And so hold faith. Hold faith in your friends and your family, and that good still exists in this world. Despite the ease with which we might think the opposite, there's still a lot of good left.
Absolutely right. There is a lot of things that would overwhelm us and that do overwhelm us. And you said it beautifully. Remain faithful to yourself, your family, your friends, and whatnot, because it will pass. That's why I say on this show to always be kind and compassionate, not only to other people, but also to yourself. Give yourself some grace. And on that, I believe we shall end this episode. And I'm so honored not only to have you as a guest, but I'm honored to call you a friend. And I'm very happy that you are in this community, my friend. And
Muchas
I will
gracias,
make
mi amigo.
sure I'll make sure to put all the links to all the socials and everywhere that they can keep following you, supporting you. But more importantly, that they know that there are people in this community that got your back. And essentially, at the end of the day, that we're all here, we're all nerds, and we're all just vibing together, so to speak. So I will make sure to do that. But folks, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to like and subscribe. But most importantly, be kind and compassionate to one another. That's what I ask for the most. Be compassionate with others and with yourself. And as always, folks, keep gaming.